20 years ago, Israeli forces were on their way out of Gaza. Back then, Prime Minister Ariel Sharon made thousands of Israeli settlers leave. Military outposts were dismantled, and for the first time, in nearly 40 years, Israel was no longer in control of Gaza. 2 decades later, Israel has decided to come back, not just to kill and destroy what it says are Hamas targets, along with tens of thousands of Palestinians on its way. Now, Israel decided it will stay and reoccupy Gaza, a decision that changed from speculation to reality in a matter of days. But this doesn't come without a price. Israel's top military leaders have been warning against this, and former senior officials have been openly criticizing the plan. But after a 10-hour cabinet meeting on Thursday night, Israel approved a plan to take full control of northern Gaza in a move that would forcibly displace nearly 1 million people. In an interview with Fox News on Thursday evening and ahead of the cabinet meeting, Benjamin Netanyahu said that after retaking control of Gaza, Israel would turn it over to, quote, civilian governance, saying that a reoccupation would ensure its security and enable the population to, quote, be free of Hamas's rule in Gaza.
Will Israel take control of all of Gaza?
We intend to, in order to assure our security, remove Hamas there, enable the population to be free of Gaza, and to pass it to civilian governance. That is not Hamas and not anyone advocating the destruction of Israel. We want to have a security perimeter. We don't want to govern it. We don't want to be there as a governing body. We want to hand it over to Arab forces that will govern it properly.
In response to this, Hamas has accused Netanyahu of sacrificing the remaining hostages, saying he backed out of near-final talks for his own political gains. But with most of Gaza already under Israeli control, this next phase marks a turning point, one that risks collapsing ceasefire talks, escalating civilian deaths even further, risking hostage lives and deepening the conflict, not just with Hamas, but with Israel itself. This is Beyond the Headlines, and I'm your host, Nada Al-Tahir. In this episode, we're looking at how and why the Israeli government decided to reoccupy Gaza. We speak to 2 Israeli voices who will tell us why this is a good idea or a terrible one for Israel. After nearly 2 years of military operations in Gaza, Israeli forces control most of the territory. But Gaza's most densely populated areas remain out of reach, an estimated 25% of the strip. Israel's new plan outlines a takeover of the remaining neighborhoods, an operation that would mean tens of thousands of additional troops, the forcible displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinian civilians, and a deepened Israeli presence across every street and every house in Gaza. The rationale? Israel's leadership argues that nothing else will break Hamas, that control must be total for security to return. Others, though, are saying that the cost for Israel will be irreversible. I've spoken to Yossi Kuperwasser, head of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security, and former head of the research division in the Israeli military intelligence. He gave us one side of the argument.
I think that what led Netanyahu to pursue this option is that the other options have all been exercised and led to no result or no decisive result regarding the goals of Israel in this war, and especially regarding the hostages. It seems that we hit a deadlock when it comes to the hostages deal, and there's no way to solve it without making sure that Hamas understands that there is a price to pay for not moving forward on the hostage deal. And the only price that Hamas is considering as important enough, significant enough in order to go for a deal, is that if they lose the control of the Gaza Strip. Because the war in general is about whether the 7th of October was a good idea or a bad idea. And as long as Hamas stays in power in the Gaza Strip, they can claim that it was a good idea.
Israel already controls 75% of Gaza at least, and it controls every single land, border crossing, the sea and the air in Gaza. What does occupation actually look like?
We control the 75% of the territory, but we do not control one Gazan. And all the population of Gaza, or almost all the population of Gaza, lives in areas controlled by Hamas. So with some exceptions, people in eastern Rafah and some other places. Most of them live under Hamas control. And as long as Hamas controls the population of Gaza, they regard themselves as the rulers of Gaza. Because Gaza is not much territory, it's mainly people. And that's why the fact that we control 75% of the territory is important, but it's not enough. We have to be able to control the rest of the land as well before we move forward. And we have to remember, we do not want to control Gaza. This is not occupation in the sense that we want to control Gaza and keep it for ourselves. We want to control Gaza so that we should be able to remove Hamas from power and convince the people of Gaza that Hamas is not coming back, so that the people of Gaza will be able to dream of a better future and to step up and assume responsibility for themselves, together with the international community, together with the Arab countries. They're going to be able to assist the Gazans to create a better future for themselves. But this is not going to happen until we remove Hamas from power. We have to first remove Hamas from power, clean the area from Hamas operatives.
What does that look like, though? How is it different from what Israel is doing right now? Because 75% of the territory is a lot. It controls the land borders, it controls the sea, and it controls the sky. Nothing can fly over Gaza without Israel's approval, including airdrops. So how does occupation differ from what is happening right now? Isn't Israel already on the path towards occupation of Gaza? And what can Israel do that it has not achieved in 2 years through occupation?
The difference between the situation now and the situation that could prevail once we take over Gaza is that not 75%, but 100% of the territory is going to be under our control, and all the population of Gaza is going to be under our control, which is not the case right now. This is the difference. And in order to make it happen, we shall have to launch an offensive that would take under Israeli control the rest of the territory of Gaza, the 25%, which is mainly the city of Gaza and the city, the western part of the city of Khan Yunis, and Deir al-Balah and some of the refugee camps, Marazi and Nuseirat refugee camps. These are areas that we shall have to take over. This is the hard nut that we have to crack, because these are densely populated areas. But we shall have to make sure that we are able to do that. And first of all, we shall have to evacuate the population from these areas before we launch a ground offensive over there. We shall ask the population to leave. They usually do. And then once we take the population out, we shall be able to fight against those operatives of Hamas that were going to remain there, take over the territory, and then allow the population to come back.
But this plan has signaled a deep fracture within Israel, because there are voices like Yossi Koprovasser that see occupation as necessary to break Hamas, although others, like Israel's top military chief, warned against it. But he's not alone. This week, around 600 former Israeli security officials, including former heads of Mossad, Shin Bet, and top military generals, have signed an open letter to U.S. President Donald Trump, urging him to pressure Netanyahu to end the war in Gaza. They argue that Israel has already achieved its military objectives in Gaza and that Hamas no longer poses a strategic threat. This happens amid growing public outrage that has fueled protests in Israel, calling for an end to the war to save the remaining hostages. To closely understand this view and the overall mood in Israel, I've spoken to one of those former officials, Ami Ayalon, who is a former commander of the Israeli Navy and former director of the Israeli security agency Shin Bet. But before getting to the points of disagreement within Israel, let's first hear from him what an occupation of Gaza would mean from his perspective.
The day after the occupation, and the question how it will look like is, instead of going into details, you have to go back to the military history, world military history, and to understand what is the meaning of occupation. First of all, you have to kill hundreds of thousands of people in order to conquer and to declare a military victory. And second, you have to go on occupying this region, which is largely populated. So you have to, in a way, control the life of every person. The assumption is that the people in Gaza, although they probably blame Hamas, I have no idea, but it seems that many of them are blaming Hamas. They do not think that Israel is a better option. And we see it will be much more difficult than what we see today in the West Bank. And in the West Bank, we see, I have no idea how to describe it, but once you understand that there is no personal freedom, the ruler or the government will decide where you are allowed to go and where you are not allowed, what you can say and what you cannot say, with whom you can meet and with whom not. So it's a horrible if personal freedom is the issue.
But that doesn't seem to be a problem for the proponents of this plan, who argue that with occupation, at least Israel will be more secure, more safe. We will eliminate Hamas. This is the argument that they're making.
You have to understand, first of all, that this government that was elected legally, it's a democratic system, do not represent the people of Israel anymore. In every poll, you see that at least 70% of the people, all what they want is to bring back the hostages and to end the war. If you put the question whether we have to stay in Gaza or to create more settlements, I don't think that more than between 10, maximum 15% of the Israelis sees a viable future. I think that everybody who believes that it will increase our security, many of them do not believe in what they say because they are saying it because of religious and ideological aspiration. And they just believe that this is a holy land and we do not have the right to give it to anybody. But when it comes to security, you have to understand the phenomenon of Hamas. Hamas is not only a military organization. Yes, they have a military wing, Al Qassam, but we destroy its military capability. Hamas do not control Gaza as from the military point of view. Yes, there are terror cells. They are people who believe that they have to kill Israeli soldiers, but it is not an organization that controls Gaza anymore. From the military point of view, we reached the point in which we achieved all what can be achieved in military, by military means. Now, the result is, and the impact will be, that our security will be decreasing. We shall have less security because in order to defeat Hamas, after defeating him in the battlefield, we have to defeat the ideology, and you cannot defeat ideology by the use of military power. The only way to defeat ideology is by presenting a better horizon, which is 2 states for the Palestinians. Unless we do it, Israel will not be secure. And by the way, we are losing our identity.
This distinction is key. One side sees occupation as a military necessity. The other sees it as the start of something far more dangerous for Israel itself. With these concerns being publicly raised by former and current Israeli military chiefs, what is making Netanyahu's government willing to proceed despite these serious consequences? Let's hear what Yossi said about this.
Everybody understands that taking over Gaza is going to come with many casualties, with a lot of damage to the infrastructure, a lot of bad things happening to the Israelis as well, because it's going to cost a lot of money and a lot of casualties once we do that. And it's going to put the hostages at risk. Of course, everybody understands that. Nobody thinks that this is a walk in the park. I think that the most important thing is to understand that the logic behind Netanyahu's effort is that until now, we didn't manage to break the logic of Hamas. The logic of Hamas of the 7th of October was that, yes, Israel is going to retaliate heavily and we are going to suffer a lot of casualties. It's going to be bad. But eventually, Israel is not going to take over the Gaza Strip from our hands. So because it's so costly for Israel itself to govern the Gaza Strip, so we have a safety net. We shall never lose Gaza. Gaza will remain ours, whatever happens. And the logic that this new policy has is that, no, we are going to take Gaza. Unlike what you think, we are going to take Gaza. Now go back to the drawing table and reassess your policy. And that's the one thing that Netanyahu can present to the people in Israel as a justification for moving into this direction.
What's unfolding isn't just a military debate. It's a clash of visions, something that Ami Ayalon describes very clearly.
When I was a commander, an admiral, or whatever, we saw the enemy as a group of targets that we have to destroy, to attack, to kill. But there is another way to see the same enemy. And this is the statesmanship. The statement sees the same enemy as a group of people who on the day later they will have to negotiate with. They are human beings. Yossi and many other generals, they do not see the enemy as human beings. They see the enemy as targets. And this is the tragedy of Israelis today, that especially after the 7th of October, the fear, the horror, and the massacre that we faced brought most Israelis and all our political leaders to see the enemy in the eyes of military commanders. We do not have any political leader which see the enemy as a statement. We do not have statesmanship in Israel today. And this is a tragedy of the region. And of course, this is a tragedy of Israel. I did not mean Hamas. Hamas is not to be negotiated with. But Hamas, from the ideology point of view, is a small minority. It's parallel to Smotrich and Ben Gvir on the Israeli side. Palestinians do not want Sharia to control future Palestine. They want freedom. They believe in democracy. Look in the Palestinian constitution.
This marks a critical turning point in Israel's military discourse. After nearly 2 years of conflict, it seems obvious to many that the current approach is unsustainable or even clear in its own goals, especially after the humanitarian crisis in Gaza that happened as a result of Israel's controlling of the aid system, something that has brought on international condemnation and pushed many Western governments to pressure Israel into allowing aid in. But were there other options for Israel? Here's Yossi again.
I discussed three options: the succumbing to Hamas, continuation of the pressure, and occupation. And each one of them has troubles and problems. Nothing is so clear that we should take one of them and forget about the others. Regarding occupation, the good thing about occupation is that it clarifies that 7th of October was a bad idea. It puts an end to the radical ideas of Iran, Hezbollah, and other radical elements in the Arab world and the Islamic world, that through operations like 7th of October, terrible, horrific terror attacks like the 7th of October, you can gain something. This is going to clarify to the Hamas and likes that this policy is a self-defeating policy and not self-profiting policy. And that's the most important benefit from this move. On top of that, there is a chance, it's not clear, it can go both ways, but there is a chance that once Hamas understands that it's going to lose the Gaza Strip and going to lose their lives, they're going to decide in the last moment to go for a hostage deal that would release at least some of the hostages that are still alive. And there's a tool to keep Israel from executing this operation of occupying Gaza. And if this is going to happen, that's going to be to the better. Anyhow, the situation of the hostages is so terrible that we cannot guarantee by any means the rescue of the hostages, of all the hostages. And even if we go to accepting all the Hamas demands, then we are not sure that we are going to get all the hostages.
So there's no guarantee that Israel is going to get the hostages either through negotiations or occupation.
Exactly.
What realistic scenarios are there apart from occupation that could bring an end to the war?
We tried all the other options with the exception of succumbing to Hamas.
So that's the only option that is.
We can still play with the idea that if we put more pressure on Hamas, they will change their attitude.
What more pressure can you put?
More operations inside Gaza City, attempting to hit the few commanders that are still left over there, Isuddin Haddad and others that are still operating there. We can put more pressure on Hamas. That's something that can be done, but I don't think to expect different results to the ones we had until now with a lot of pressure that we put on Hamas. We killed Yahya Sinwar, we killed Muhammad Sinwar, we killed Muhammad Deif, we killed everybody almost in the higher echelons of the Hamas. So this has not convinced them to go for a hostage deal. So why, if they lose Isuddin Haddad, they're going to all of a sudden accept hostage deal? I doubt that. We can try that, but eventually we'll have to tackle the logic of Hamas and force them out by force.
Would you ever concede to the idea that 22 months of pressure, as you put it, which has killed so many people in Gaza, would you ever concede that maybe this wasn't the right approach? Or is it just that more should have been done?
No, this was the right approach, and it led to the release of 200 or so hostages. But when you come to the last hostages, this is not enough, because the last hostages are so important for Hamas. It's life insurance for Hamas. So it's the tools that were relevant in order to release the hostages in the previous rounds are not relevant in this when you get to the final line. And that's why we have to do more.
But at this final line in the war, as Yossi describes it, the other camp in Israel can see other solutions. Let's hear what Ami has said about this.
The option is very simple. It's the Arab Peace Initiative.
Ami calls for a return to diplomacy, a regional approach, one that brings Arab nations, Palestinians, and international actors together. How can the Arab Peace Initiative or any initiative be implemented if the person who is running the show in Israel is refusing?
It's a great question, because for the first time after many years, It is not a small conflict between Palestinians and Israelis anymore. It is a regional conflict that will shake the region. It will shake the economy of the region with a major impact on the international community and to the global economy. It will shake the stability or the instability everywhere, in Israel, in the West Bank, in Gaza, in the region, because we cannot assume that by conquering and occupying Gaza, we shall preserve the peace with Egypt, we shall preserve the peace with Jordan. We understand that there will be no normalization with Saudi Arabia. We are deepening our conflict with all our neighbors and with the world of Islam. And we are deepening our isolation within the international community. So this is why I believe, look, for the first time, I used to say, one day, we Israelis will find a way to cross this barrier. But after the 7th of October, I cannot say it anymore, because most Israelis lost confidence. And I think most Israelis believe that all Palestinians are Hamas, and most Palestinians believe that all Israelis are Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. So nothing good will come from Israel, nothing good will come from Palestine. And this is the time of the international community. And the Arab Peace Initiative should be the goal, and the Egyptian initiative, which is, okay, you Israelis, we leave Gaza, we Egyptians, with neighboring Arab states, with the Palestinians, we shall dismantle Hamas, and with the assistance, with the leadership of the world.
Yossi, however, sees things differently. He says the region can help, but only after Hamas is gone.
The moment we shall find the Palestinians that are convinced that Hamas is not coming back, the moment we shall find Palestinians who are ready to assume responsibility for their lives and live next to Israel and not instead of Israel, and this moment we find the readiness on behalf of the international community in the Arab world to come in and help these Palestinians establish their own self-rule in Gaza that will enable them to improve their living conditions and reconstruct Gaza and turn it into nice places President Trump was dreaming about a Riviera. Once we find these people, once they are convinced that they can move in because Hamas is out, then we shall leave Gaza. We don't want to govern Gaza forever. The sooner we leave, the better it is.
But can any solution realistically be implemented without Israel's own willingness? Despite extensive behind-the-scenes diplomatic efforts, particularly by the Palestinian Authority, Arab states, and some European countries, progress remains limited. Here's what Ami thinks.
We understand that if we have two options, we shall choose the rational option. This was exactly what we did after the bloodiest war, Yom Kippur, in which we refused to go back from Sinai, and we thought that only occupation of Sinai will bring us security. What we understood after losing, or after we saw 2,700 of our soldiers dying, and we didn't count the Egyptians, we signed the peace agreement with Egypt. And it was the same. We came back to negotiate in Madrid only after the Intifada, and a request that we couldn't refuse to Bush the father. And we pulled out of Gaza only after the second Intifada, and another request from Bush the son. So when we feel the pain, finally, the whole process should start with an announcement of President Trump, with the Saudi Prince Crown, with the leaders of the region, with the support of the international community, based on the Saudi-French initiative. It should start with reality of two states. This is the goal. Probably we shall achieve it in 10 or 20 years, but this is the place that this region will go. And then we shall have to negotiate. And this will be the mandate of the international community. If we shall do it, if Israelis will see all these leaders not only threatening us and not behind the scenes and talking to the Israeli people, not to our government, will not listen. But we shall have elections in 12 months. And it should be part of the Israeli and the international debate within the elections, Because if we shall know that we are heading to a better future, we are rational. This will be the way that we shall choose.
So what is the way out of this? Israel's leaders this week didn't only debate their next move. They were choosing between two paths, one shaped by military necessity, as they say, the other by political vision, which Ami thinks is lacking, especially after the first year of war in Gaza.
It was a just war. It became not a just war after about 1 year. When we dismantled, when we destroyed Hamas as an organization.
What was the turning point?
Well, the turning point was when the IDF commanders said, after about 12 months, that we achieved our military goals. We dismantled Hamas, and our government did not present a political goal. Until today, they refuse to discuss the day after. Because they understand if they will put the day after on the table, it will be clear that they are minority. Israelis are totally opposed to the continuation of the war and to occupy Gaza and to build settlement in Gaza. And the people who lead this government, this is the future that they see. So they refuse to put the day after on the table because they understand that they will not get the support of the people.
The reoccupation of Gaza, once unthinkable, is becoming a reality. As Israel pushes deeper into Gaza, the questions remaining to be answered are, what happens to the people there? What does this moment reveal about the future? And is it a repeat of history with even higher stakes? That's it for Beyond the Headlines this week. This episode was produced by Dua Farid and audio engineered by Arthur Edison. And I'm your host, Nada Al-Tahir. Thank you for listening.